I stare at the battered Samsonite suitcase sitting in the corner of my small room, its faded blue fabric and scuffed corners bearing witness to decades of life. Karen bought it for our honeymoon to Hawaii 38 years ago. Back then, it was pristine, a symbol of our bright future. Now, it is the only physical vessel connecting my past in America to my present here in Quinhon. At 69 years old, I have learned a profound truth that most people spend a lifetime running from. Everything that truly matters can fit into a single suitcase, and everything else is just weight pulling you down. My name is Tom Reinhardt. For 27 years, I managed a retail hardware chain store in Portland, Oregon. I was the man who knew where every bolt, every gallon of paint, and every power tool was located. I built a life on the accumulation of things, helping other people accumulate things to build their own lives. We had a 4-bedroom house filled with furniture we rarely used, a garage stuffed with tools and holiday decorations, and a mortgage that demanded constant feeding. It was the American dream, or so I was told, a dream built on the silent anxiety of maintaining a kingdom of possessions. The illusion shattered slowly, then all at once. The hardware chain, unable to compete with online behemoths, announced massive closures. At 62, I found myself standing outside the locked doors of the store I had devoted my life to, clutching a severance package that would barely cover 6 months of expenses. I tried to find equivalent work, sending out hundreds of applications only to be met with the deafening silence of an economy that had no use for an aging retail manager. We started burning through our savings, the anxiety creeping into our home like a cold draft that no amount of insulation could stop. Then came the diagnosis. Karen, my anchor, my partner, the woman who made the accumulation of things feel like a home, was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. The medical bills piled up, a terrifying mountain of paper that threatened to bury us alive. We sold the house, downsizing to a cramped apartment, watching the equity of our life evaporate to pay for treatments that only bought her 6 months of unimaginable pain. When she passed away, I was left adrift in a sea of grief, surrounded by the remnants of our life together, boxed up in a storage unit I could barely afford on my monthly Social Security check of $1,120. I spent my days sitting in the dim apartment, staring at boxes filled with china we used twice a year, photo albums, and clothes that smelled like her. The sheer volume of my possessions felt suffocating, a physical manifestation of my grief and failure. I was 66 years old, financially ruined, profoundly lonely, and trapped in a city that had become too expensive for my meager existence. My daughter, Brooke, lived in Seattle, fighting her own battles with a demanding career and a young family. I could not become a burden to her, a ghost haunting her guest bedroom. One rainy afternoon, as I was mindlessly browsing the internet, searching for a way out of my despair, I stumbled upon a video about expats living in Southeast Asia. The algorithm then led me to a book titled "You Were Never Meant to Stay." The link is in the description. The author spoke of letting go, of shedding the heavy skin of consumerism, and finding freedom in minimalism. The book resonated with a frequency that shattered my paralysis. It spoke of a place where one could live with dignity on a fraction of a Western income, a place where community and connection outweighed the accumulation of wealth. I began researching Vietnam, drawn not to the bustling hubs of Ho Chi Minh City or the tourist meccas, but to a quiet coastal city called Quinhon. It promised authenticity, a place where fishing boats bobbed in the harbor and the rhythm of a life was dictated by the tides, not the rush hour traffic. It was a place where foreigners were rare, a truly Vietnamese city where I could disappear and perhaps reinvent myself. The idea took root, growing from a desperate fantasy into a concrete plan. When I told Brooke my plan, she was terrified. She wept, begging me to move into her basement, to stay close, to remain within the safe confines of the life we knew. It was the hardest conversation of my life, looking into my daughter's eyes and telling her that the life we knew was slowly killing me. I explained that I needed to breathe again, to find a place where my $1,120 a month was not a poverty sentence, but a ticket to a dignified existence. Slowly, reluctantly, she understood that this was not an escape from her, but an escape from the crushing weight of my own life. The process of selling everything was a brutal exorcism. I stood in the storage unit, holding the artifacts of my existence, and realized how little of it actually mattered. The china went to an antique dealer for a fraction of its cost. The furniture was donated. The tools were sold at a yard sale. With each item that left my possession, I felt a physical lightness, a shedding of invisible chains. Finally, there was only the battered Samsonite suitcase. I packed it with clothes, a few books, my laptop, and a small wooden box containing Karen's ashes. Everything worth keeping fit in one suitcase. The rest was just weight. The journey to Quinhon was a blur of airports and exhaustion, a physical transition that mirrored the profound internal shift. When I stepped out of the airport into the humid, salt-tinged air of central Vietnam, I felt a strange sense of arrival. The city was a sensory explosion. The smell of fish sauce and jasmine, the chaotic ballet of motorbikes, the vibrant colors of the markets. It was nothing like Portland. It was loud, it was messy, and it was wonderfully, undeniably alive. I rented a small, clean apartment just a few blocks from the beach. Let me break down my finances, because the reality of living here is what makes this freedom possible. My rent is $250 a month, which includes internet and water. I spend about $200 on food, eating incredible bowls of pho and fresh seafood at local stalls where the owners greet me with wide smiles. My electricity bill is around $40. Health insurance, a comprehensive local plan, costs me roughly $90 a month. In total, I spend less than $700 a month out of my $1,120 Social Security check. I am actually saving money. For the first time in a decade, the suffocating fear of financial ruin is gone. But the true wealth of Quinhon is not financial. It is the deep, authentic rhythm of the community. In the mornings, I walk to the beach as the sun rises, joining hundreds of locals who swim, practice Tai Chi, and play badminton on the sand. The fishing boats, painted in brilliant blues and reds, return with their catch, a daily spectacle of labor and life. There are almost no foreigners here. I am an anomaly, an old American man with a battered suitcase, but I have been welcomed with a warmth that defies language barriers. I have learned to communicate with gestures, with smiles, with the few Vietnamese phrases I have clumsily memorized. The woman who sells me my morning coffee knows exactly how I like it. Strong, with a touch of condensed milk. She refuses to let me pay more than the local price, treating me not as a wealthy tourist, but as a neighbor, This city has given me a community I never knew I was missing in the isolated cul-de-sacs of American suburbia. Here, life is lived out in the open on the sidewalks, in the cafes, shared among neighbors. It has not been without its difficulties. The heat can be oppressive, a heavy blanket that demands a slower pace. The language barrier is a constant challenge, turning simple tasks like going to the bank or explaining a plumbing issue into complex pantomimes. There are moments of intense homesickness, days when the smell of rain on pine needles or the taste of a proper Pacific Northwest IPA feel like a physical ache. I miss the easy conversations with Brooke, the ability to simply drive over and see my grandchildren. The distance is a real, tangible cost of this freedom. Yet when Brooke and her family came to visit last year, the validation was profound. They saw the lightness in my step, the color in my face. They walked with me through the chaotic markets, ate the fresh seafood caught that morning, and saw the respect and affection my neighbors showed me. Brooke hugged me tightly before they left, tears in her eyes, and told me she finally understood. She saw that I had not run away to die, but had moved halfway across the world to finally live. The streets of Quinhon are a labyrinth of sensory experiences. Every morning, the scent of burning incense mingles with the salty sea breeze, creating an intoxicating perfume that signals the start of a new day. I walk past small shop fronts where vendors arrange their vibrant arrays of tropical fruits. Dragon fruit with their neon pink skin, spiky rambutans, and enormous jackfruits that look like prehistoric artifacts. The air is always thick with humidity, a constant reminder that I am far from the crisp, cool mornings of the Pacific Northwest. Yet this heat feels like an embrace rather than an oppression. It slows the pace of life, demanding that you sit down, perhaps on a small plastic stool, and simply watch the world go by. I often think back to the days in the hardware store, the endless aisles of fluorescent lights, and the hum of the HVAC system. It was a sterile environment, meticulously organized and utterly devoid of the chaotic vitality I experience here. In Quinhon, order is an illusion. Traffic flows like a river, motorbikes weaving around each other in a complex, unspoken choreography that terrifies outsiders but makes perfect sense to the locals. There are no stop signs, no angry honking, just a fluid movement that requires a level of collective awareness I never witnessed in the structured lanes of American highways. My apartment is a sanctuary of simplicity. There is a bed, a small desk where I write these reflections, and a balcony that overlooks a narrow alleyway. I do not have a television. I do not have a garage filled with tools I will never use. When I wake up, I do not feel the crushing weight of maintaining an empire of possessions. Instead, I feel an incredible lightness. The suitcase sits in the corner, empty now, a silent reminder of the journey. Sometimes I trace the scuff marks on its surface, each one a memory of a different trip, a different time leading up to this final, ultimate departure. The financial aspect of this transition cannot be overstated. In the United States, my Social Security check of $1,120 was a cruel joke, a slow bleed into poverty. Every unexpected bill was a crisis. Here, that same amount is a shield against anxiety. I can afford to eat well, to pay my rent, to secure health insurance, and still have money left over. It is a profound shift in perspective to realize that poverty and wealth are often just matters of geography, By simply moving myself across the globe, I transformed my financial terror into secure independence. But the transition was not merely geographical or financial. It was deeply emotional. Letting go of the physical items Karen and I had accumulated was akin to mourning her all over again. The dining room table where we hosted Thanksgiving dinners, the armchair where she read her mystery novels, the garden tools we used to plant the spring bulbs, each item held a fragment of her. Selling them felt like a betrayal. It took months of agonizing deliberation before I realized that the memories were not housed in the wood or the fabric. They were housed in me. The things were just anchors, keeping me tethered to a past I could not resurrect. When I first arrived in Quinhon, the isolation was palpable. I did not speak a word of Vietnamese, and the locals, unaccustomed to seeing Westerners who were not transient backpackers, observed me with a mixture of curiosity and caution. The first few weeks were a test of endurance. I struggled to buy groceries, pointing and nodding, often ending up with ingredients I had no idea how to cook. There were nights when the loneliness was so intense it felt like a physical weight on my chest, a dark whisper asking me what on earth I had done. But I refused to retreat to the familiar. I forced myself out of the apartment every day, walking the same routes, visiting the same stalls, until my face became a recognizable part of their landscape. Slowly, the ice broke. It started with a smile from the PHO vendor, a woman whose hands move with the practiced grace of someone who has prepared the same dish 1,000,000 times. Then a nod from the elderly man who sits on his porch every afternoon, smoking pungent tobacco from a bamboo pipe. Soon I was no longer the strange foreigner. I was the old man who lives down the street. We communicate in a bizarre, beautiful hybrid of gestures, broken English, and my terrible pronunciation of Vietnamese words. The connection is primal, rooted in basic human acknowledgement rather than complex conversation. My daughter Brooke's understanding has been the final piece of the puzzle. Her visit was a revelation. We spent a week exploring the coast on a rented motorbike, eating seafood so fresh it tasted of the ocean, and sitting on my balcony watching the thunderstorms roll in over the South China Sea. She saw that I was not just surviving, I was thriving. The anxiety that had etched deep lines into my face over the past decade had smoothed out. I was laughing again. When she left, she didn't ask when I was coming back to Seattle. She asked when she could come back to Quinhon. As I record this, the sun is setting over the mountains that cradle Quinhon. The sky is a canvas of brilliant oranges and purples, a daily masterpiece that costs nothing to witness. The fishing boats are heading out for the night, their small lights dotting the dark horizon like fallen stars. I am sitting here, a 69-year-old widower from Portland, living a life I could never have imagined a few years ago. I am deeply, profoundly grateful for the circumstances that forced me to reconsider my path. The closure of the store, the financial ruin, even the agonizing grief of losing Karen, they all led me to this moment. They stripped away the illusions and left me with the stark, beautiful truth of what truly matters. Letting go is not an event, it is a daily practice. Every time I walk past a shop selling things I do not need, every time I choose to repair an old shirt rather than buy a new one, I am reaffirming my commitment to this minimalist life. The suitcase is the physical manifestation of this philosophy, but the true letting go happens in the mind. It is the release of the ego, the surrender of the need to control, the acceptance of life as it unfolds. It is the profound peace that comes from knowing that whatever happens, I carry everything I need within me. I hope my story serves as a beacon for someone out there who is suffocating under the weight of their own life. You are not trapped. The walls that surround you are built of fear and convention, and they can be dismantled. You do not need the big house, the overflowing garage, the storage unit full of memories. You only need the courage to pack one suitcase and the willingness to step into the unknown. The world is waiting for you, and it is far more beautiful, far more welcoming than you have ever been led to believe. Thank you for listening. The link to You Were Never Meant to Stay is in the description. May you find your own Quinhon wherever it may be. My daughter Brooke often asks me if I regret not making this move sooner. The truth is, I could not have made this move sooner. The journey required every ounce of pain and loss I experienced. The closure of the store, the terrifying diagnosis that stole Karen away, the brutal financial reality of trying to survive on $1,120 a month. These were the fires that forged my resolve. If my life had continued on its comfortable trajectory, I would have died surrounded by my possessions, oblivious to the profound beauty of living lightly. The Samsonite suitcase was the catalyst. When I stood in that storage unit, overwhelmed by the sheer volume of my accumulated life, and realized that everything truly valuable could fit into that faded blue rectangle, I experienced a moment of absolute clarity. The rest was just weight. There is a profound stillness that settles over my apartment in the middle of the day. The heat outside is a thick, shimmering curtain that keeps the city quiet for a few hours. In Portland, my midday hours were a frenzy of phone calls, inventory checks, and managing employee schedules. The constant hum of artificial urgency was the soundtrack of my life for 27 years. Now the only sound is the gentle whir of the ceiling fan and the distant muffled horn of a cargo ship pulling into the harbor. I sit on my small balcony with a glass of iced jasmine tea, watching the shadows lengthen across the narrow alleyway. This stillness used to terrify me. When I first arrived, I found myself pacing the small room, desperate for a task, a problem to solve, a fire to put out. It took months to deprogram myself from the American cult of productivity to realize that merely existing, observing, and being present is a completely valid way to spend a day. The food here is an education in simplicity and flavor. I remember the aisles of the supermarket back home, filled with processed food designed to last for years on a shelf. We ate out of boxes and cans, convincing ourselves it was for convenience. Here, convenience means walking to the end of the street and buying a bowl of pho that has been simmering for 10 hours, made with ingredients bought fresh at the market that morning. It costs less than $2. The flavors are vibrant, complex, and alive. I eat a lot of fish caught locally and grilled over charcoal, served with mounds of fresh herbs that I could not have named a year ago. My body has responded to this change. The chronic indigestion, the sluggishness I accepted as a normal part of aging, it has all vanished. The food here is not just fuel, it is medicine, and it is a daily celebration of the senses. The lack of material possessions has cleared space in my mind that I didn't even know was occupied. When you are not constantly thinking about what you need to buy next, what needs repairing, or how to afford the next upgrade, a vast, silent expanse opens up within you. I read more now than I have in decades. The small stack of books beside my bed, many of them traded with the few other expats passing through, are devoured with an attention I haven't mustered since college. I write these reflections in a simple notebook, finding a rhythm in the physical act of putting pen to paper. The cluttered garage of my mind has been swept clean, and the thoughts that fill it now are slower, deeper, and infinitely more satisfying. The Samsonite suitcase, with its faded blue fabric, stands as a sentinel guarding this newfound mental clarity. My health has been a surprising beneficiary of this move. The physical act of walking everywhere, the fresh diet, and the dramatic reduction in stress have rejuvenated me. In Portland, I was on medication for high blood pressure and cholesterol. The cold, wet winters exacerbated the arthritis in my knees. Here, the warm climate soothes my joints, and the daily walks along the beach are a natural cardiovascular routine. The local health insurance, which cost me $90 a month, is excellent, though I have rarely needed it. The concept of preventive health here is built into the lifestyle. You move, you eat well, you engage with your community, and you rest when you are tired. It is a stark contrast to the American model of working yourself to the bone and then paying exorbitant sums to fix the resulting damage. The relationship I have with my daughter Brooke has shifted in beautiful ways. When I lived in Portland, our interactions were often transactional or rooted in obligation. The quick phone call on Sunday, the rushed dinner when she visited. Now our conversations are long and meaningful. Because we are separated by an ocean, we make the time count. We talk about ideas, about books, about our internal lives, rather than just reciting the events of our week. She sees a version of me she thought was lost forever. The man her mother fell in love with, the man who used to dream before the weight of the world crushed him. The distance has paradoxically brought us closer. As I look out over the South China Sea, the water reflecting the final fiery hues of the sunset, I am overwhelmed by a sense of gratitude. The tragedy of losing Karen, the financial ruin, the terrifying leap of faith, they were all necessary steps on this path. If you are watching this, feeling trapped by your possessions, your debt, your fears, I implore you to take a hard look at what is holding you back. Read You Were Never Meant to Stay. The link is in the description. Let it challenge your assumptions. You do not have to accept the script you were handed. You have the power to write a new one, to pack a single suitcase, and to step out into a world that is waiting to embrace you. The courage it takes to leave is immense, but the reward is a life truly lived. The Samsonite suitcase is my testament to that truth. It holds all my physical possessions, but it could never contain the wealth of experiences, the depth of peace, and the vibrant connections I have found here in Quinhon. Do not wait until you are 69, financially ruined and broken by grief to figure out what matters. Start now. Shed the weight. Let go of the anchors. The world is vast, beautiful, and ready for you when you are ready to travel light. Thank you, and may your journey bring you the peace you deserve. I sometimes wonder what Karen would think of all this. She was a woman who loved nesting, who found comfort in the soft linens and the carefully chosen art that adorned our Portland home. Yet, in her final months, when the cancer had stripped away the superficial, she spoke only of experiences. She talked about our honeymoon in Hawaii, the time we got lost driving through the redwoods, the simple joy of watching Brooke take her first steps. She never mentioned the china cabinet or the upgraded kitchen appliances. In the face of mortality, the accumulation of things reveals its profound emptiness. I carry her spirit with me in the small wooden box, but her true legacy is the lesson she taught me at the end. Hold on to the memories, hold on to the love, and let the rest burn away. The rhythm of the seasons here is subtle. It does not mark time with snow and changing leaves, but with the shifting winds and the intensity of the rain. The monsoon season is a spectacle of nature's power. The rain comes down in solid sheets, turning the streets into rivers and demanding that everything stop. In America, rain was an inconvenience, something to be battled with umbrellas and windshield wipers on the commute to work. Here, the rain is respected. When it falls, the city pauses. People gather under the deep awnings of cafes, sipping coffee and watching the deluge. There is a communal acceptance of nature's dominance, a surrender that is surprisingly peaceful. It is another lesson in letting go of control, of realizing that you are part of a larger system that does not care about your schedule. The concept of stuff has become entirely foreign to me. When you live in a small apartment and have everything you need, the desire to acquire more vanishes. I walk through the markets and admire the craftsmanship of the local artisans, the vibrant textiles, the intricate woodwork, but I feel no urge to possess them. I can appreciate beauty without having to own it. This is a profound psychological shift. In America, appreciation and acquisition were inextricably linked. If you liked something, you bought it. Here, the beauty belongs to the city, to the moment, and I am merely a witness. This detachment is incredibly liberating. It frees up emotional and financial bandwidth that used to be consumed by the endless cycle of wanting and buying. I want to emphasize again the importance of the book, You Were Never Meant to Stay. The link is in the description. It is not a travel guide or a financial manual. It is a philosophical treatise on the nature of freedom. It provides the intellectual framework necessary to deconstruct the myths we have been sold about success and security. When you read it, you will feel a sense of recognition, a validation of the unease you have carried for years. It is the push you need to realize that the life you are living is not the only option available to you. It gave me the vocabulary to articulate my profound dissatisfaction and the courage to take radical action. It is the second most important thing in my life, right after the blue Samsonite suitcase. As the years pass, my reflection in the mirror changes. The sun has deepened the lines on my face. The hair is whiter, thinner, yet the eyes looking back at me are brighter, clearer than they were a decade ago. They are the eyes of a man who is wide awake. I am 69, an age where society expects you to fade into the background, to become a quiet consumer of medical care and daytime television. Instead, I am living the most vibrant, engaged chapter of my life. I am learning a new language, adapting to a new culture, and forging connections that transcend borders. Age is not a barrier to reinvention, it is the ultimate qualification. You have acquired the wisdom to know that the conventional path is a dead end. I often sit by the water as the evening falls, watching the small circular basket boats, unique to this region, bobbing in the gentle surf. The fishermen maneuver them with a grace and skill that is mesmerizing. They are simple, functional, and perfectly adapted to their environment. In many ways, my life has become like one of those basket boats, stripped of excess, maneuverable, and perfectly suited to the waters I am navigating. The massive, cumbersome ship of my previous life, with its heavy cargo of possessions and debt, has sunk, and I am profoundly grateful. To those watching, I leave you with this final thought. Your life is a singular, irreplaceable event. Do not spend it maintaining a museum of things you do not need. Do not spend it in a state of quiet desperation, terrified of a financial future that you cannot control. Take inventory of your anchors, acknowledge them, and then slowly, deliberately begin to cut the chains. It is terrifying. It goes against everything you have been taught. But on the other side of that terror is a freedom so profound, so sweet, that you will weep for the years you spent in captivity. Find your Quinhon. It may not be in Vietnam. It may be a small town in Mexico, a quiet village in Portugal, or a cabin in the woods. But find the place where your resources provide dignity, where your presence is valued, and where the rhythm of life aligns with your soul. Pack your suitcase. Let go of the rest. The weight you shed will be the wings you need to fly. Thank you for listening, and may you find the courage to begin your true life. The link is in the description. Farewell.